if you're a young person listening to this, um, what I would want you to know first and foremost is that yes, it is okay to be a sexual being.
Welcome to the Core Insights podcast, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of human potential. Here at Core Insights, we're peeling back the layers of human experience to reveal core truths that drive personal growth, authentic living, and peak performance. Each episode will be joined by members of our exceptional Core Elements team, seasoned therapists and coaches who are passionate about helping you unlock your full potential. We're not just sharing theories from textbooks. We're sharing real-world wisdom gained from years of practice, cutting-edge training, and most importantly, the profound experience of working with clients just like you. Let's begin this journey together. Welcome to Core Insights, where transformation starts at the core. Brittany's back.
I'm back.
Launching off of our last episode on sexuality in adults and all the things, and my own journey, your journey, Erin's journey, but it definitely triggers, my parent parts and teacher parts, educator parts around young adults, raising them and raising young adults. And so, it's always been a passion of mine to, if and there's any way, shape, or form I could help my kids or kids I'm influencing not carry the boxes that I carried, not dive into the shame pits and the guilt pits and all the yours too. Like if we could somehow divert them to have a healthy, pleasurable, mindful, connected experience for themselves, their bodies, their sexuality with each other. Yay. Big ask.
Yay, indeed.
Yay, big ask. So Brittany, our expert, how do we do that? How do we talk to kids? Kids saying, when I say kids, I'm saying young adults, obviously, consenting, age appropriate young adults.
Yes.
But yeah, like if we could help them divert, the moment wants to bubble wrap them all up and help them not feel pain, which is not possible, I know. But to be able to walk through their sexual experiences and their sexual bodies and their sexual changes and all the things from a place of curiosity and play and pleasure and openness to explore and experience, rather than like I did, put it in a box and bury it in the basement somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the first thing to recognize is that as parents, you can only do so much, because then there's the world.
Right.
Right. Then there's the world. And there is all the narratives, and there's all of the judgment, and all of these things are existing. And there is a way, either as a parent or as a teen, there's a way to gather tools, or to give your teen or your young person these tools, so that maybe, just maybe, some of these narratives, some of the conditioning, maybe it doesn't land so deep. Maybe some of it actually bounces off.
Right.
Right? Like maybe, and that's what we are seeing happening more now. That is one thing so social media, in some ways, it does a lot of harm, especially around young people growing into their sense of self and autonomy and identity. And it also, they have these resources of educators, sex educators, and different people talking about sex like never before.
Right.
Which is amazing, right? Like some of my nieces who are teenagers, they've been following my page for a while because their parents are amazing. My partner's sister, like, so amazing, and her kids are now teenagers. One's going off to college, and they've followed my stuff for a long time. And there is a way for us to be in conversation. But this is what we have to recognize from either standpoint, right? So like if you're a young person listening to this, what I would want you to know first and foremost is that yes, it is okay to be a sexual being. Like, you're a sexual being. Of course you are. And that is 100% your choice of what that looks like. That is 100% your choice of what that looks like. In your thoughts, in your body, in the way that you love, in the way that you seek out connections with other people. that is your choice. It's not your parents' choice. It's not your friend's choice. It's not, I'm going to say it, it's not your God's choice. It's no one else's choice but your own. It's not your teacher's choice. It's your choice.
And so when
And
those kids hit the roadblocks from parents, their churches, their teachers of
yeah.
like, no, 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 this is the box we need you to fit in. Because we preach, wait till marriage, or we preach masturbation is bad, or whatever their box they're hitting up against. How would you speak to the kid that's the adolescent, the young adult that's rubbing up against that friction?
Yeah, well, it's important to recognize that oftentimes our parents are trying their best to keep us safe.
Right.
And the problem with that sometimes is that what they think keeps us safe might not actually be in alignment. Right now, there's when a child is born, the parent, it is their responsibility to keep them safe.
Yeah.
Right. And then there is a time when they don't have to try as hard. But that doesn't mean that desire goes away. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. Our parents always want us to be safe, always want the best for us. Let's use that phrase, the best for us. And here's the thing, and I'll just talk from my experience, right? As someone who grew up with parents, what my parents thought was best for me may not have always been best for me.
Yeah.
And as a parent, that can be really hard because we're all just doing the best we can with the knowledge we have in that moment.
Yeah.
And so we're bringing in our backpack of stuff into what we're doing and what we know. And I want to say, I'm not a parent. Right? I'm not a parent. I'm a very observative human, and I do a lot of relational work. So I want to make that clear that I'm not a parent. I'm not moving from that space of expertise, but I'm moving from a space of working with so many people. And even on the calls that I have, what do we talk about? We talk about what happened when they were children. And we talk about what happened, sex was never talked about, or if it was talked about, it was super cringe.
Yeah.
Like it was so like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And what I want to say to both young people and to their parents is that it's okay to talk about sex with each other. It's okay. You can have boundaries about how you do that. You can have guidelines about how you do that, but it is okay to do that. It is okay. Teens, young people, your parents most likely are sexual beings, right? They're sexual beings. And I say most likely because some people are asexual. But I still believe that within asexuality, you're still a sexual being. Your sexual beingness just looks different.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just operate from the standpoint that even if we're in that spectrum of asexuality or gray or whatever that is, which just means different ways that your relationship with sex and desire expresses itself or doesn't. Let's just say we're all sexual beings.
Yeah.
Right? We're all sexual beings, and that can look like lots of different things. Parents, they're sexual beings, teens, sexual beings. And what an exciting time that it could be to be a young person with all of these hormones and feelings and questions and desires, and you're seeing all the stuff, and maybe you watched porn and you're like, whoa, is that what it's like? And I'm here to tell you, no, that's not what it's like. Right? It's not what it's like. We're going to come back to that. We're going to put a pin in that for just a second, but that is going to be a big conversation that we're about to have. But I just want to say that whatever you're feeling and experiencing, whatever your child is feeling and is experiencing is normal. And so if you're a parent, go back and think about how you were treated during that super precious, exciting time. Were you nurtured? Was it fostered? Was it pushed down? Was it repressed? Was it never talked about? Which is what I get a lot. It's never talked about. It's never talked about. Right? Was it cringe? What was it? And what would you like to offer, for your child? And here's the thing. It starts way before that. And I think that's the thing. It's like, oh, now I haven't done any of this, and now I have to talk to my kids about sex. Shit, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And here's the thing. It starts with when kids are now, if you're like, but I have a teenager, they're not two anymore. But, it can be helpful to know also, like, when your kid is little, use the word penis, use the word vulva, tell them the difference between a vulva and a vagina. There is a difference, right? Vagina's on the inside, vulva's on the outside. But like, we can start these conversations way back. We can have conversations around consent with 3-year-olds. It's not going to be in a sexual context necessarily. We can have conversations with kids who masturbate in public and say, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
We do that in private for these reasons. But we don't say, don't do that, it's bad. Don't touch yourself, it's dirty, right? And so these are the things, because there might be people listening that do have little ones that will eventually be the teens that I'm talking to right now. And so it can start really early. Now, if you're at a place where you're like, okay, I'm not having any more kids and I have teenagers, it might feel uncomfortable. And so bring that to the table, right? Bring that to the table. But if the first big conversation that you're going to have with your child is around sex, that's going to be very uncomfortable. So how else are you communicating with your kids? What does that look like? And if there isn't a lot of communication, what could it look like to be? I know it's not easy to talk to teenagers sometimes, right? And the same with young people that are listening. What could it look like? Because here's the thing. Our parents, in some ways, know more than us about some things, right? They do. And they can be an amazing resource for the things that we don't know yet. Because I'm going to the young people, there are things that you don't know yet. And that's really exciting because there's things that you get to learn and you get to discover, especially about yourself and about your bodies and about your sexuality. And so the thing that your parents will never be able to tell you is what that looks like for you. They will never be able to tell you who you're supposed to love, what your sexual orientation is, what your gender identity is, what kind of kinks you're going to have. That's probably not a conversation you're going to have with your parents, right? We don't have to talk about our parents about everything. What kind of toys you want to do, what kind of sex. They can't tell you those things, but what they can do for you is they can be a resource. They can be a container for knowing that if you need them, they can be there for you, right? That's where we can show up with a steady, unwavering, non-judgmental, even if you're like, what is happening? What are my kids do? What's happening? Right?
Well, it's true. It's funny that I'm feeling that my body's like, oh, I remember those feelings. But, I planted seeds with my kids early on about sexuality and masturbation and, whatever. Like, I just started planting little seeds and they'd be like, roll their eyes and ew. But when it came actually to when they were teenagers, the conversation, especially with my son and his girlfriend at the time, who are going to be dying that I'm telling these stories, but, it was actually really fun. Because they showed up in a different state of like, okay, we're getting ready to have intercourse. I said, do all the things first, and teaching, my son in front of his girlfriend about the clitoris and the bulbs. And they were like, wow, really? And right. And I had no idea. And I didn't know about 15 orgasms back then. I wish I'd have known that then. I would have taught them that then, right? But then when it came to that, they were in a place of curiosity. Of okay, we want to do this thing and what else should, what to expect and what about lube? And so it was for me, it was precious. Even though some of my parts were there's definitely mom parts that are a little gaggy, a little bit oh, my baby, that's for sure, a little bit my baby's adulting now. There's that, I feel all this stuff in my body for sure. But there's massive parts that were this is so awesome that they're coming to me. And even my son's girlfriend's mom, after coming, she was like, thank you. Because I wasn't prepared to do that. And I'm just really grateful that they had you. And also, what about, I have some questions too. I'm like, well, here's what I know. I'm learning as I go through it too, but right. So it was a beautiful, actually, conversation that for me, I'll remember forever being precious.
And I think too, as you were speaking, I was thinking even in my experience, is like sex is talked about in a reproductive way.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't
Yep.
get pregnant.
Yeah.
Right? I think of like Mean Girls, like you're gonna have sex, penis is gonna fall off, and you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
it. Right? Like it's like, no,
Yeah.
that's actually not the case at all.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't talk about desire or pleasure.
Mm.
I have young kiddos that come in. I work with a lot of elite athletes, and when they come to me, and I will genuinely look in the eye and say, being a teenager is literally the hardest thing in the world. Is actually really
So hard.
right. I remember my dad being like, "Oh yeah, it's super tough being a teenager," right? And I look back, I'm like, actually, yeah,
Yes, it was.
it was. You couldn't pay me $1 million to go back and be a teen again. Your hormonal, your neurobiological sense of self is completely shifting.
Yeah.
For women in general, you're getting boobs, a butt, some hips, maybe not, right? Like things are shifting. That's your entire body.
Yeah.
And then we ask you to perform, right? We ask you as an elite athlete, I'm asking you to push yourself to an envelope and find new skills, push to a new level, make the AAA team, do this, do that, all while I think that kind of like turned me on. And I think I kind of like that guy, or I'm having this crush, or that felt good, or that didn't feel good. And the only conversation I have with my parents is that now I have a boyfriend. I'll say that with air quotes. I have a boyfriend, and now I have birth control pills on my bedside table. Like that's the I love you, Mom. I love you. I have two older sisters. That was the only conversation we got. But opening up the door of being like, sex isn't just about reproduction. Sex is about understanding what's happening when your body starts to change, when young women start to have their cycles or start to begin to have them, or in between, or like that's a long legacy of time in our lives as women that shifts, right? Like for my athletic point of view, like during ovulation, women can lift heavier and do more. Right before their period, they are heavier, but they actually can stack more calories, which means they'll PR or personal record more often than not. Like there are some really powerful moments in how our genitals work and our body and hormones move that how we educate in that space. It doesn't have to be
No.
And then we can get into like, oh, and then this like desire and those like tingles that you start to feel. Let's lean there. What happens there? You don't have to tell me all the blurry details, but actually you're not unique, honey. That's normal. And I'm happy. That means you're healthy and that's okay. And like, let's move through it and not feel like locked and loaded. Don't talk about it. Do it behind a closed door, because guess what, parents? Your kid's going to have sex. They're going to do it in a bathroom, a car.
Yeah.
They're just going to. There's no avoiding it unless you lock them in their room forever, but they'll probably find a way to sneak out. So they're going to do it. So may as well teach in a space of, why don't we make this a really enjoyable space? Because
healthy and safe and clean. It's a stall. Dirty.
Yeah. Like safe in all areas.
All areas.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Like if I could go back, and I work with a lot of young people now, and being like, it is really hard to be a teen, and an early adult, young adult, it's actually really hard. Significantly for me at 25, even I felt like my body completely shifted. And it was like, oh no, I felt I was like locked and loaded, buckle up, things were gonna get weird, and I had to like sort it all out. So like, if I had the relationship to my body differently, I think it would have been really different, really like a different trajectory, not in essence of like where I'd be today. I'm so grateful, but I think having that understanding of my body as an athlete, as a student, as just a human that operates in the world in this weird meat suit I get to live in. But if I had to understand it more, I think, I wish that my parents could have had the confidence to show up in that space.
Yeah. And then where do you start with those conversations? Like with those people, those teens that are coming in, those young adults coming in, where do you start with that? Opening that door. You're right. I think what you said before in our last episode of, the needs, the boxes, the labels, like a lot of undoing. Hopefully you're younger and have less than adults have to do, but I'm sure that exists with our people that come in our office. And so, maybe the earlier, the better of the open door discussion, that this is open for communication. And if it's not your thing and it makes you uncomfortable, find another adult that's safe. Like find a friend, an auntie or an uncle, like find someone that's safe, like an educator of some sort that's safe to do that education with.
My brain just went like, and calling a penis is not better or worse than calling it like a ding dong. Like a, instead of saying vagina or vulva, you call it a cookie. Like that doesn't make it better.
No.
It makes it more uncomfortable.
It's confusing. It's confusing. And it's,
also, for little people, I worked with a child advocacy center where unfortunately worked with young kiddos that were involved in sexual trauma and sexual assault. That also creates a really awful container of safety. Right. So you talked about consent. My brain went there too, being like, teaching little ones at the soonest you can, and being, it's okay to tell a little girl that that's her vagina and that's her vulva and that's his penis.
Yes.
Right. That's okay, because it come to a place that he can come to you and say, this happened
In this part of my body,
in this part of my body. Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
It's not the cookie. Well, what cookie? What do you mean?
Mhm.
You don't
What's
call
the cookie?
Yeah.
the cookie. Okay.
Mhm.
Right. So there's a double-edged sword for parents that are listening, that actually can be much more beneficial for your like safety, protect my kids parts. Lean in there, and you can notice that like actually teaching them those words, kids can be more safe too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And empowering for you. And unfortunately, men don't think have as many parts as the vulva has much more complex parts. But
well, I mean, there are some parts in the
There's some
in the
parts.
penis. Yeah.
True. I don't maybe know as many as those parts.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
pretty good.
yeah. For example, like, the penis isn't just what's external. There's the root of the penis that can be stimulated that you can't see, and the testicles, and all of these different things. But I really want to, there's so much to unpack with this.
Also went on a tangent.
Yes, these conversations need to happen early. And here's the thing, it's uncomfortable. Talking to anyone about sex is uncomfortable if you didn't have the space to talk about sex. So, if you're a parent and you're like, well, how do I talk to my kids about sex? Talk to someone else about sex. Like literally, like talk to your friend do you talk to your best friend about sex? Do you talk to your partner about sex? And I mean that because a lot of people, even that, they have sex, they don't talk about it. Sex is one of the most taboo, repressed, pushed down things. We don't talk about it. And now here's the thing about kids that is just so remarkable. Kids feel all of the unspoken things. They feel all of it. They see, I had a partner who had kids, and we were open, but they didn't tell people, and they didn't tell their kids. And I'm like, listen, your kids know. I know they know. Kids are very smart. Like you guys listening, you guys are very smart. And so if there's something under the rug that you think you're pushing under as an adult, as a parent, like it's going to be felt in some way. And I see this all the time, right? The unspoken things. And yeah, sex is, and one of them is that sex is for reproduction, right? The sex is to have a baby, but not yet. So don't get pregnant. So don't have sex. And then all of a sudden, I'll talk about my personal experience here. So first of all, I guess I'll say lucky in air quotes, that when I was 10, I came to my mom and I said that someone said that I said the F word. And I was like, I don't, and it was bad, and I don't know what it means, but someone said I said it, but I didn't say it. And what does it mean? And my mom thought that was an amazing opportunity to pull out a book that was all about sex. And I was like, wait a second, what does this have to do with anything? And that's how I learned about, sex. And of course it's the penis goes into the vagina and the baby is made. And there was little characters, and it was horrific and wonderful all at the same time, I guess you could say. And this is how I learned about it. And, I was lucky enough to have a partner whose mom was fine when we were teenagers, with us being in his space. Like one time she caught us in the shower, and I was mortified. And she's like, it's okay. We were 17, 18. She's like, it's okay. It's fine. So, I got lucky to have some positive reinforcement. But for me, I grew up Catholic. I went to a Ukrainian Catholic all-girls school. There was a big assembly about chastity. I had a chastity pin on my backpack when I was 14 years old. And then I had my first makeout session when I was like with this boy that I was just so into. And I was like, burn that backpack with that chastity pin to the ground. Yeah. Right. Like I was like, what? Wait a second. Because that's the thing, right? It's like, oh, sex is reproduction, don't have sex, but yet you're feeling all these things. Yes. Yeah. You're feeling all these things. So this is what I'm talking about all the stuff that gets pushed under because we're told that we're not supposed to have sex, or that we have to wait, or we have to be in a relationship, or we have to be in love, or it has to look this way, or it has to look that way. Yet our bodies are telling us something very different.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and if we're not told, if we're not validated, right? Like you said, Erin, like being a teen is hard, right? Like also validating, like you are absolutely feeling a lot of feelings. You're probably feeling super turned on at times. And maybe you're like, I want to make out with this person, or maybe I want to do more with this person, but I don't know if I'm ready to do more with this person. Right. And so first there's those things, like there's like all of this stuff that you're feeling. And then there's the messaging that you might be getting from people that are older than you and, know better than you. They may know better than you, they may not. And so first I want to say, like, whatever you're feeling in your body, again, like, is normal and natural. And this is something that, I support, I've had to learn as an adult, and many have supported many adults in learning, is that just because there is a desire, or there is something that your body wants to do, and there's this like really intense urge to want to do it, doesn't mean that you have to do it right away. Right. And so this is where we back up and we talk about the fact that absolutely, that sex is not just for procreation. Personally, I am not using sex and will never use sex to make a baby, ever. I've chosen that. I've never done that, and I will not do that. Okay. And so let's start with just talking about the clitoris for a second. The clitoris has nothing to do with reproduction other than it's pleasurable. So people will want to have sex to reproduce. Maybe that's the only thing.
Right.
The clitoris has been created for vulva owners' pleasure. Right? And this is something, let's talk about the fact that the whole clitoris, which isn't just a little nub, right? It's not just the glands, it's this big network. It's the bulbs, it's the legs, it's this shaft, very much so like a penis, that it wasn't put on the map until the 90s. Wow. Until the 90s by an Australian urologist. Okay. And in some anatomy books, still the whole clitoris isn't actually used. Okay, so let's just first talk about that.
Yeah.
That it's like, oh, don't look over here. Like, don't look at this thing that can bring you so much pleasure, that most people just stumble upon when you're young and you're like, whoa, this feels good. What's going on here? And so what would it be like to be able to, if you're a young person listening to this and you're like, well, where do I learn this stuff? Where do I find this stuff? Like, there's so many resources now, right? That you can, there's educators, and like, you can literally look up like a map of the clitoris and look these things up yourself. And you can educate yourself on what is possible in your body. And it's really important to recognize that, and find, and if it's, if the adult isn't a parent, maybe it's an aunt, or your parents' best friend, someone that you have a really close relationship with and you feel safe with, and they have demonstrated that they respect you, right? I think that's really important, to feel that those are the people that you can talk to about these things, right? If they're open to it, right? Like find the people that you can have these conversations with, because, and I told you we were going to come back to this, it is not from porn.
Yeah.
Porn is not education. Okay. And I mentioned her, Dr. Timmery Schmidt, in the last episode, and I want to bring her back up again, because she says something that I quote all the time that is my favorite, and it is this: learning how to have sex from porn is like learning how to drive by watching the Fast and Furious movies. You would never do that. It is an accelerated entertainment that you watch for entertainment. Porn is for entertainment. And if you are watching porn, you have to recognize this is where media literacy comes in. We have to recognize that if we watch porn, we see porn, and I'm not encouraging young people to watch porn necessarily. I think that there is a lot of porn out there that is way too intense for people to be watching. But guess what? It happens. So let's talk about it. There is something that happens before all the stuff that we see in these things. And what it is that people are negotiating. People are talking about their boundaries. People are talking about what they're doing. People are getting their bodies ready. People are putting on protection. There are intimacy coaches in movies now. There are literally in regular movies, not porn, regular movies. There are trained intimacy and when I say intimacy coach, I don't mean like similar to what I do. I mean for films that literally are there for the two people that are having sex, in a movie, and it's a little bit different than a porn, right? There are people there to support that whole process, make sure boundaries don't get crossed, make sure people are safe. And so these are the things we're not seeing when we're watching movies with sexy scenes or we're watching porn, is that these things are for entertainment. They are to turn people on. They are to be exciting. They are to be illicit. They are not how regular sex happens. And what does this mean? Let's talk about like some of the pieces, right? So for example, it takes someone with a vulva way more time to have an orgasm than what you're seeing. In fact, there could be prep that's happening before that you're not seeing, right? And so 25 to 45 minutes it can take for someone with a vulva, with a vagina, with a clitoris to get that erectile tissue to engorge. So that's something to recognize for someone, if you have a vulva, that it takes time. For someone with a penis, recognize that there are lots and lots of people that don't always stay hard or have an erection, right? There are people that don't ejaculate, and it's okay, right? It's okay. There's so much pressure. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was 15 years old, 15, yeah. Back to the boy that I was like, oh my God, we had the make out, and I was like, oh my God, the backpack is gone. Like, what chastity pin? He was my first for a lot of things. And I was performing oral sex on him for the first time, and I had no idea what I was doing. And his penis was like a fire hose. I don't know why, but it was moving all over the place. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I did it for a little bit. And then I stopped because I was like, I don't know what's supposed to happen.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. And this is, I really want to drive this point home because I think these things still happen. He had done the same thing to me a couple of weeks before. I didn't orgasm at all. He did that to me for a while. I didn't orgasm. We moved on. I was like, this was cool. This was fun. I didn't even really know what that all was about. I was like, this is amazing. This boy that I have such a crush on is doing this sexy thing to me in my best friend's living room. And it was great.
Listen in, parents.
After the semi-formal, right?
Yeah. True.
Right? See? And so, this happened. And then a couple weeks later, I did the same thing to him, and he did not have a climax either. And then we were at a party. Of course, he told his friends this, and my friend at the time made a song up about me not bringing him to climax, right? And now, I loved the attention, so I can't say I felt very shamed. I was like, this is great. I'm getting all of this attention. So I'm going to be honest, like it wasn't like a shame point for me, but it would absolutely be for many, many, many people.
Yeah. But
even then, and I think this is why, and I don't know why my brain worked this way, and I'm so happy it did. I was like, he didn't make me come.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have a climax. And so there's also something that I just, to the young people with vulvas in this space, and to the young women in this space, is that we are taught as young women, and to the guys in the space and the people with penises in the space too, because you need to hear this too. We are taught that male pleasure is most important. And that literally, I learned that at 15. That was what I learned.
Mhm.
Is that, my friend who made a song that was, he didn't come, so I stopped. That was the song to like a Green Day song. It was hilarious and very, very mean spirited, right? But I learned that that's because that was this idea. Even then, as teenagers, they were running around thinking that male pleasure, you have to make the male person ejaculate, but female, oh, what's that? What does that even look like? And so I'm here to tell you that female pleasure or pleasure for people with clitorises is just as important, and that pleasure doesn't necessarily mean you have to climax. Sex doesn't mean that you have to have an act of penetration happen. If you're not ready for that, that is so valid. And it doesn't mean that you can't explore in all the other ways that there are meant to be explored in your body.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, so important. So there's the layers of conditioning.
So many. I was brought to a time I went to I showed up as like a guest to a dinner party. And I would say I was like the token lesbian. It was all like these straight women and they're three were pregnant, one just had a baby. I was just like a fish out of water mostly. So I was like, okay, we're in it. And somehow we got talking about sex, which again, that's a whole other area for me that it's like, as soon as a gay woman comes in, they're like, tell me more. I'm like, there's literally nothing, but it's different because it's not with a man, really, I guess. Anyway, but the conversation was more so along the lines of like, how many women around that table at one point had said, well, I think I've had an orgasm. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
Like my heart. And not that that's because it's sad that you haven't had an orgasm. It's sad that you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you don't know your body enough to be like, oh no, I know what it is. In my smart ass sense, I was like, oh, you know.
Yeah.
So in my head, I was like, oh, you know.
So in my mind, I'm like, really? Right. But the expectation is that like my male partner in that context, that male partner should know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, well,
you might have no idea.
Interesting, because I don't think you have an idea.
Yeah.
So if you have an idea, how is he going to have an idea? And then vice versa, right? So same content, like context for you is being like, okay, so I didn't make him come, so I stopped, but he also didn't. So he stopped.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what they were doing. Just two or more.
And that's okay.
People coming together, doing something fun that felt great. And then we stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Like that's it. But like in my mind going like, man, imagine if you can teach that place of like desire and being able to know what it feels like to feel pleasure, not necessarily to the pinnacle.
Yeah. Like, why is that always the goal?
That doesn't have to be the goal. And how much pressure that brings on.
Yeah.
Right. That it's like, oh, like I have to finish, or I have to have an orgasm, I have to come. So you're sitting there in your head being like, okay. And then it's like, no, I hope this is done soon. Because like and I'm, maybe it's for the parents in the room being like, oh, I gotta go pick up the kids, or I gotta get back to work. And it's actually opposite of why you even started doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
So finding more space of like actually feeling attuned to your body will allow you to enjoy that space more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be so pressured. Right. And taking a while as a woman to have an orgasm, that's okay.
I think that's a really big one. I want to jump off of that because I hear that all the time with adults, all the time, is that they are afraid that they are taking too long.
Yes.
They are afraid that they are taking too long. And so, however old you are, especially if you're new to this, like if you're new to experiencing this, you're not going to know what you like. You're not going to know. And so, Dan Savage talks about this a lot. He talks about the fact that, people with penises, young boys come to sex oftentimes super experienced with what they like and what their bodies, because oftentimes it's understood that people with penises, they are going to masturbate when they're young. For young girls, for women, it tends to not be the case. Now, yes, it's a narrative that's not necessarily true. However, oftentimes there's much more shame about females masturbating, and it definitely does not happen as much as males. And so and again, Dan Savage talks about this, and I think it's brilliant, when female people come, and when women come, young women come into this space to have sex, oftentimes they are not sure what their bodies need.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm not saying that everyone with a penis knows exactly what they need either, but oftentimes there is this, like, I've touched myself a bagillion times and I know I like this and I know I like that. And so it oftentimes could take longer for you to explore. So what I would say is explore your own body, explore your own body, explore your own body. No one is a mind reader. No one can tell you, literally putting up a post on Instagram about this tonight. No one is a mind reader, and no one can tell you, no one knows what you exactly need. There's no such thing as a good lover in the sense of what we think it is, of like, oh, there's this person and they're so good in bed because they do X, Y, and Z, and this is great. No, you know what makes a good lover? What makes a good sexual partner? They listen.
Yeah.
They're invested in your pleasure. They understand what consent really means, which is an ongoing conversation. They understand that sex can end at any time, right? That boy, that my crush stopped when he was done. He didn't stop when I was done. He stopped when he was done. And I was like, I thought it was great. I stopped when I was done, right? Like, and it was fine. It was awesome. It was great. There was no orgasms that were had. I didn't even think I knew what orgasms were at that point. But now it's so like prevalent, orgasms.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't have, and this creates so much pressure. And to the women that are like, I don't know if I've had an orgasm. I think also it's because the idea of what an orgasm is misguided.
Hmm.
An orgasm isn't just what we think of as an orgasm is often just a clitoral orgasm, which is a burst of pleasure, contraction in the vaginal walls, and that's an orgasm, and that's what it feels like. There are orgasms that do not feel like that. For example, penetrative orgasms oftentimes do not feel the same as clitoral orgasms. And so, I think it's between like 14 and 17% of women that can have an orgasm during penetrative sex. That doesn't mean with a penis. That just means with something penetrating their vaginas, right? Just to make sure that we're clear on that. But that's like 14 to 17% in partnered sex, right? The reason I think why that is so low is because I don't think people know what to look for.
Yeah, probably.
I think there's other reasons too, right? There's other reasons because most people, it's way higher by themselves, right? But I think that a lot of people are looking for this typical, what they see in movies, what they see in porn, what they've heard about, and it's different, right? There's lots of different ways to experience pleasure. Like, what would happen, especially if you're a young person, if there was someone that you liked and there was someone you wanted to explore with, and what if up front you were really clear on what you wanted to do? And this is literally what I tell adults that are in long-term relationships. I say, this is what I do with my own partner. How do you want to connect tonight?
Yeah.
How do you want to connect tonight? That's what I say.
Yeah.
And it could be body caresses. It could be having a naked dance party or dance party in our underwear. It could be looking at each other, breathing together. It could be talking about maybe something that is sexy to us. It could be having more traditional forms of sex, right? It could be mutual masturbation. Like, there's so many ways to explore our sexuality. And the best way to start to understand what you like is to do it with yourself first.
Absolutely, for sure. And the idea of how do you want to connect tonight, it widens that it expands the container of like connection and pleasure. Pleasure isn't just orgasm. That's one piece of the puzzle, and that's not the end goal of the time. Pleasure connection might be the bigger goal actually here. And so with self, for sure, right? Speaking of, vulva, that there's like, learn from you so many different areas, like explore the perineum, explore the A spot, the P spot, the G spot, there's other spots to explore to experience pleasure differently, so that when you engage with the partners, whatever, you have some sharing to do. And the idea of how do you want to connect? Asking yourself that. How do I want to connect? How do I want to connect with my body tonight?
Yeah, and and I just want to say that, like, I know that if there's young people listening to this, you'd be like, I am not asking my boyfriend, my girlfriend, like they're gonna think I'm a weirdo, like, like that could be like, wait, what? Like, you're I'm not gonna do that. That's not what we do. And think how amazing, like, you would look if you came into a situation where you understood yourself and felt confident, where you didn't let someone push you around.
Yeah.
Right? Uh, you know, I don't know if this is because of my trauma or because of my upbringing or because I got this little special gene, but when I was a young person in my teens and my 20s,
I don't.
I very much, there was lots of men and young men, boys that tried to coerce me into doing things that like not to do things from a space of non-consent, but oftentimes boys are and young men are indoctrinated into this idea. An understanding of the way men are socialized and the way women are socialized, that men have to coerce or have to talk women into having sex a little bit. Like, that's how. There's a song back in the day by Robin Thicke that was called Blurred Lines that literally speaks to that. And then that women have to, they're gonna be shy. They have, like, it needs no, but not like this. This is no. This is not where we want to operate.
Mhm.
And I remember I was in college and there was this guy who was very attractive and he knew it. And we were in his dorm room and he was trying so hard to get me to have sex with him. I mean, he was literally laying out on the bed like an Adonis, being like, look at me. And the funny thing was his roommate was on the top bunk, hysterical laughing because I was like, it's not happening. Like, it's not happening. Because I would get big. That was my protective mechanism. I would get big and I would say, absolutely not. Like, it's never happening. I don't need, like, what does sex mean at this point? I don't even know. Like, I would be so against it. And so I want to say that it is okay if someone doesn't like you because you stand up for yourself. It is okay. And this is for everyone. This isn't just yes, it's for the women. I'm talking to you. But you know what? There's a whole nother trope for men that is like, well, they're always supposed to want to have sex and they're always supposed to, and they're always horny and all of these things. So for you guys too, it's okay if you don't want to have sex. It's okay if you want to do something different. And it is okay to take a moment to listen to what your body needs. It's okay to go to the bathroom and say, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I still do that. If I'm in a situation where I'm like, let me make sure that what I desire is actually what I need right now. Go to the bathroom, look myself in the mirror, take a breath, right? And then come back and be like, yeah, it's on, I'm in. Or no, thank you. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard as a young person to be like, we want to be liked, we want to be in a group, we want to be accepted. That does not change. That literally is a fundamental need that we have as humans, based on the fact of the tribe, and that if we're kicked out of the tribe, we die. So it can feel like death if we are not part of groups. I'm sure we've all had experiences where we have been kicked out of groups and it has felt horrible, right? But you know what's worse than that is self-abandoning or self-betraying ourselves because we want to be liked or loved, right? And it's going to happen. It happens,
Yeah, for sure.
right? It does. And it's okay. You will make it through. And it's okay to disappoint someone. It's okay to disappoint the boy you like or the girl you like. It's okay to do that if you know that you're doing what you need. And so I think that's so important beyond like everything else, is that.
And I don't know is okay. Like, I don't
Yes.
have an okay answer.
Yes.
Like I've said it before when we've podcasted, is being like, I don't know is an answer. If someone gives you an acquisition or comes towards you and goes like, hey, I want to be involved in this intimate thing with you. And you go like, that I don't know is okay.
Yeah.
I don't know isn't a yes, and I don't know isn't a no. I don't know. Maybe we're not right now. That's okay. I don't know is an okay answer.
Yes.
I think a lot of the stuff I heard you talk about too, and I think is important for kiddos, and I bring myself back to that, even my early 20s and kind of late teens, is that just because you have a physical response to something, right, doesn't mean that that's like my sexual orientation, that's my preferred sexual partner. That actually there's no meaning behind it. It just means my body's giving me some intel. Okay. Right.
Have to act on it.
I don't have to
can
act
just
on it,
notice
or I don't, there's no parts there that you have to like really unpack, or that I have to like shove away and be like, no, well, clearly this is what that is. Right. Like I would say to people that when I left my marriage initially to a man, I defined or identified as a bisexual because that to me it was like, well, I was with a man and only men at that point, and we were married, so like clearly I had sex with men, and then I now want to be with women, so I've been with both. So that I guess that means that's what that is. So I again putting myself in this little box. But what's true is that if I was single today, I could probably still have sex with men because my body can be aroused. That's a physiological response. Is it my preferred partner? No. My preferred partner and my sexual orientation, or what I identify as, is that my life partners are women. That's who I want to be with. That's my desire, my needs there. How I've unpacked and gone to places is that when I choose to physically step into space with men, it wasn't emotionally safe. I really got entrenched into that narrative of like submissive and dominance of like, when I'm with men, I'm very like meek and like, okay. And that was, and we've talked about before in a previous podcast, was like almost like an emotional bashing. Like it was like what I deserved, way back to that self-worth, right? Being like, all these things that happened, and I'm not on the yellow book world anymore, so may as well. Or if I can force myself to do it, may as well. So I think for kiddos and any young people listening, or even adults or women, right, being like, just because you have a physical response doesn't define you at all. And nor are we saying, because don't come at me, I'm not saying that just because you have a physical response to a woman that you're gay, nor am I saying that being gay is a choice. That's not what I'm saying either. However, just understanding your body and knowing that like it doesn't put you in a tiny box. You're aroused. You're a sexual, living, breathing thing. It's amazing.
Be curious about that.
Yes.
Pleasure lives in being curious. Like the tense, what we talked about last podcast, is literally being curious. Be curious about pleasure in all the areas. I'm like, that's interesting. Hey, like just be curious.
I love that. I mean, I think that's such a great way to to close, is to be curious and to yes, like the feelings that you're feeling are so normal, right? There's desires and there's urges, and it's there. It is not meant to be pushed down. It is meant to be approached with curiosity. And so much curiosity and excitement.
And so many important things you said earlier, about listening, understanding, safety. Like there's just so many important things that you've said that I just really appreciate you speaking to today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes.
Honestly.
Beyond, I think so many, again, from the athletes I work with, from the young women and men. I went through a time in my practicum where I had a lot of like young college kids, boys actually, that are young men that were coming in that was like had their first girlfriends or like all those types of things. And the joke was like, I'm seeing a gay therapist, so like I'm gonna be a great lover now, because like I'm like, wow. That's the ongoing joke. But however, just being like how awesome it is that the narrative is open. But I think there's a lot here that a lot of people get a lot from. So thank you.
You're so welcome. It's such an important conversation to have.
Because you're young, your parents are listening, be curious, open conversations with your kids, with each other, with your partners. Like it's just such an important place to launch from for the rest of your life. We were sexual beings forever.
Forever. Forever.
Forever.
Here's to that.
Cheers. Awesome. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard today, make sure to share, subscribe, and like our channel, or better yet, share our podcast with others. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Bread Dog Studios production.